for short. This morning I had this one story come to me. And then I heard the theme tonight. It's like, well, I'm not sure if I want to tell that story. It's deep. And so I want to ask y'all, do you want the deep story or you want the second story I thought of when I got here? Both, I'll combine. So it's my first time here. I've been on stage a few times around in my life, but I'm going to do my best to share the story. So my grandmother lives in my cheeks. When I'm 5 years old, I'm sitting on my grandma's lap. And she's feeding me bananas and calling me monkey and petting my cheeks. And my brother and I, it's 1964 in Cleveland, Ohio, my brother and I, my parents have dropped us off. We're watching the Ed Sullivan Show. We're watching The Wonderful World of Disney. My Uncle Joe, my grandfather's cooking scrambled eggs for us. And I look into her eyes, and what I feel, what I realize now over time, is that her eyes were half there. There was a hollowness. And we go back in time to when my mom is 5. And they're in a ghetto called Rzeszów, and the Nazis have come in and sent them from Kalisz, which is this town they lived in. My grandmother was beautiful. She was one of 3 sisters, and they were seamstresses. And my grandmother was a businesswoman, very resourceful. And they were helping their parents, and created this amazing life. My grandfather, Joseph, he was a shoemaker. And so they had a manufacturing of shoes. The Blitzkrieg comes in, the Nazis fly in, my mother's being carried on my uncle's shoulders, and she said, what are those big birds? Those are planes. So they get ghettoized in this ghetto called Rzeszów. And my grandmother realizes that the ghetto is about to be liquidated the next day. So she sews in my mother's jacket money and jewels, and she puts her underneath the fence. And my mother's a little histrionic. My mother is 89 years old. She just had cataract surgery. Right? And I said, Mom, how are your eyes? And she says, I can see more clearly. I can see my wrinkles, she says. I'm like, oh. And I was like, Mom, do you see Dad's faults better now? And my dad's 95. My dad is turning 95 this Monday. He's also a Holocaust survivor. He was in Death March, liberated from Buchenwald. Man is inspiration. He's got the greatest sense of humor, so loving, so kind, and funny. Got some Holocaust jokes. I won't tell those tonight, but I could. That'd be over the top. Boy, I could tell you that. That would be over the top.
Maybe tell one.
Maybe I will. I'll get back to that. I'll get back to you on that. So my mother starts to cry and scream, and this woman takes the jewels and takes the money and pushes her back under the fence. She goes back into this ghetto. She goes back into her father's arms. The last time she saw her father, his name was Joseph, and he holds her Rosa, and he holds her in his lap. And my grandmother walks in and turns white. And so they escape from the ghetto that night. They go through a cemetery, they go into an outhouse, someone helps them. They escape to Warsaw. And my mother's hides in Warsaw. She's 6, 7 years old. There's a Polish woman a girl who pretends to be my mom's sister. My mom's hiding in closets. She's freezing from being called a Jew. And they survive. And they're liberated by the Russians. My mother remembers when the Russians came in. We celebrate my dad's Liberation Day from Buchenwald. Every April 11th. Hey, Dad, what's today? Yeah, it's Liberation Day. We just celebrate, right? I asked him once if he felt like a victim. He said no. That's my dad. And my mom, she went she remembers that her Liberation Day. So what about my Liberation Day? She said, yeah, Mom, what was that like? The Russians come in, and they play music. She says they could have raped them, her and her sister. And they played music, and she remembers, and she played the Bohemian Rhapsody. And she played the Hungarian Rhapsody by heart. They were whisked away to Munich, and that's where she went to school. They came to America. My parents met in a bakery in Cleveland, Ohio. And the joke is that my dad was told, his sisters fixed him up. He said, ask her to climb the ladder so you can see her her butt. So we did, and the rest is history, and here we are. So, yeah, that's the story of my mother and my grandmother. And my grandmother, Stella, I just really want to honor her. I cried this morning. I accessed the story. I sobbed. I felt her grief. She had to leave. She made Stella's choice. She had to leave her husband behind to escape and survive. And whatever she had to do to survive, she did. But she broke down in the 50s. She had, there was no trauma treatment. I'm a trauma therapist, generational trauma therapist. I'm going to finish up with a joke. So, no trauma treatment. She had a breakdown. And when I learned this a couple months ago is that she had electroshock therapy when I was 5, around that age. And so, if you can't see someone in their eyes, you know how eyes are just like vital, right? It's how we see each other, we're seen, And I really believe that when we really take grief all the way through, there's joy. There's joy. It's a river, and grief is what melts trauma. It's what heals us. We go in, we can find that joy through the river, right? And melting that ice. And so, yeah, that's the story I was meant to tell tonight. Today is Nowruz, so I want to say Nowruz Mubarak. Woo! The Persian culture is such a beautiful culture. I have such an affinity for that. And it's also St. Patrick's Day was Sunday. Today is spring. And on Saturday night is Purim. And Purim is a masquerade party. It's kind of like Jewish Mardi Gras. And my father's name was Mordechai, so I call myself Mardi Gras. And it's fun. We read the Megillah, we tell the story. The story is set in Persia, where the Hebrews and the Persians are convening by the rivers of Babylon. So celebrating all the celebrations, all our cultures, all our lineages. Lots of fun and joy. To my grandma Stella, here she is. She's telling the story to you.